Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oladele Ayorinde. I'm happy to welcome you to the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series today. For some who are joining us for the first time or you are new on this platform, the Organ House Concert and Seminar Series is a space of intellectual engagement, rigor, and most importantly, experiment of different or diverse approaches. So central to the project of the Organ House Conference Seminar Series is to provide a space. We can see alternative spaces of expression, engagement, and explorations of issues around music. And by that, I mean ways in which music shape everyday life on the one hand, artistic exploration, documentation, and the many ways in which uh, convey how things work around us. So on the other, we can say we explore music in an holistic manner. We explore compositions, creative work, scholarly works, education, business, and how digital technology is shaping the music culture across African society. So today's today's seminar is unique in its own sense because we are having one of Nigeria's composer, scholar, who is quite prominent and in terms of his work and also, well uh, vast in terms of engagement in scholarly discourse around African art music, composition by African scholars, particularly from the from the Igbo perspective and also Nigerian take on this idea of you know, modern African compositions. So today I am happy to welcome my good friend, brother, comrade, anything, whatever the accolade that fits. I and our presenter today, we've shared a path together in many ways, particularly as um, co-student in the same department at the same time when I was doing my PhD, and we were colleagues, we were friends, particularly, as Nigerians in foreign land studies somewhere together over the years. So I'm happy to, have um, my friend, brother and colleagues today, Dr. Chidi Obijiaku. I will shortly introduce him and hand over the mic to him. But before that, I like to also, in a more, not in terms of comprehensive way, but in a very, very basic way, I like to uh, tell us a bit about Dr. Chidi Obijiaku, particularly in his current status as a composer, as a director, as a scholar. So Dr. Chidi Christian Obijiaku is a Nigerian music theorist, composer, conductor, and scholar based in South Africa. He's exploring African urban soundscapes as creative and aesthetic resources for modern African art music composition in the 21st century. Uh, his work, uh, his works are, archives of work, or less we can say his work definitely features an eclectic approach, drawing on Igbo, primarily Igbo traditional music, Nigerian hip-hop, Highlife, and R&B. In addition to his outstanding academic, publications and reputations, he has published in some globally visible journals, both in South Africa, Nigeria, and of course, North America and globally. Dr. Obijiaku's compositions and orchestral works, have been highly performed and widely accepted both in South Africa, where it's based, Nigeria, his home country, and Europe, and as well as United States of America. Um, so I am happy to welcome Dr. Obijiaku today. It's an interesting, we're so excited to have him today. So I would like to hand over the baton to Dr. Obijiaku today for him to lead us in this conversation. Dr. Obijiaku, you are welcome, and the podium is yours now.
Thank you very much, Yo, for inviting me to this platform to share my research partly and my advocacy. I call it advocacy because I've met some resistance and some counter opinions, but I don't mind. I keep saying what I'm saying. And hopefully one day, one or two people join me. And in that, I will have disciples. um, I I want to start this way. What we call African art music, a term I have very serious issues with. But let's leave that for now. African art music, as we know, the type we have in Nigeria, or Nigerian art music, as we call it, would not have originated if not for colonialism. We would have had a different kind of African art music, Nigerian art music, I would say. For example, if you go to Ethiopia, the art music in Ethiopia is different from what we have in Nigeria. But colonialism has made it the way it is, which is a mixture of European art music and Nigerian traditional music. Nigerian traditional music, which you can call Igbo traditional music, Yoruba traditional music. Again, traditional music is a term I have a problem with, but let's not go there. So, today we have a kind of African Nigerian art music made possible by what colonialism brought to us. You know, we were brainwashed to believe that European art music was the climax of intelligence. And we swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. Of course, some of us in the 21st century still project that idea, where so many have tried to wash that idea off their minds, if at all we could. And this prescription, we tried to invent our own in the sense of mixing Nigerian traditional music with European traditional music to be able to produce something that is understandable to our people. And this product, which now we call Nigerian art music, still maintaining the colonial narrative, don't want to go there for now, has tried to maintain the standard acceptable by the Europeans during colonialism. And even a few years after colonialism, we tried to advance. But at some point, I felt that we became stagnant. I believe around 1970s, 80s, where we were stuck in studying traditional music as the basis for composing African art music, as we call it. I don't see that as wrong. But I see that as very limited in the sense that it recognizes only traditional music as the only resource for composition. Now, a society cannot exist without evolution. Society evolves, and so does the music in that society. So does the tradition of that society. As long as human beings also evolve, because I believe that how we looked when we were 15 is not how we look when we are 30 and 60 and so on. This is the reason why I advocate for our music to reflect the times and the lifestyles in Nigeria. So what I've come to do here is not to lecture you. What I've come to do here is what, for the Christians here, Isaiah said, "Come, let us reason together." It is not something only one person can do. Let me go to one of the narratives, one of the challenges I've faced. First of all is that the basis of African art music should be traditional music. I agree with that. But there are other cultures that have evolved. Right now, we are recognizing only two cultures: European art music culture and Nigerian traditional music culture. How do we recognize it? If we come to choral music, we still write in 4 parts mostly. And if we come to, for example, melody, vocal music, we also, of course, we try to tune the diatonic scale so that it rhymes with the contour, speech contour of the Nigerian languages. But what happens when we do not recognize that the very time when that compositional technique was invented was about 100 years ago? And 600 years, a lot of cultures have evolved, a lot of living styles. In fact, I say a lot of urban cultures have evolved, at least. To me, that is not the only living style that has evolved. But why are we still in the 21st century replicating what was invented in the 20th century and 19th century? It's a food for thought. Sometimes when you try to change the compositional patterns, you find out that the performers we have are not able to perform it. Why? Because we are stuck in the traditions of 19th century, the foundations of Nigerian art music, which is the blend of Nigerian traditional music and Igbo and European traditional music. Now, my question is, in the 21st century, when, for example, urban cultures have evolved, urban music, comedy, and a lot of other lifestyles have evolved. Why are we not looking at those urban sounds or urban cultures as part of our music? We believe, and truly, that music is a representation of the time, the society, and the culture within which it was made. The question we should ask ourselves is the music we are producing today, which we call Nigerian art music, really Nigerian? No, the idea within art music is high art, which is meant for a certain set of people with, in quote, high intellectual capacity. It is not for everybody, so we say. And that is a fallacy, according to me. Music should speak to the experiences of people, no matter how small. It shouldn't be for a set of people. Now, so many people have asked me, why is it that popular music, I use that word lightly, that popular music progresses more than Nigerian art music? I said it's very simple. It speaks to almost everybody. And how does it speak to everybody? Because it originates from the urban area. And it takes into consideration lived experiences for the people in the urban area. I've always made this argument. Let me come back to the argument that African traditional music should be the basis of Nigerian traditional music should be the basis of Nigerian art music. Yes, I agree. But how do we view it in the 21st century, where you are living in Lagos, for example, or in Abuja, and you have to physically travel to a village in state is still close. A village in maybe Abeokuta side, in the hinterland, or Udi in Enugu State from Abuja. It might not be physically, but cognitively, you can travel that far. What are you going to do? To research African music, Nigerian traditional music, indigenous music, to be used for composition of Nigerian art music. Now, what you have simply done is ignored the resources around you in Abuja where you live or Lagos and ran down to Enugu, Udi, to research traditional music. Whereas you have abundance of music in Abuja, or abundance of compositional resource in Abuja. But you looked at it and you do not recognize it. You are only drawn to the music of Udi people, for example. When the music is completed, it will still reflect your music training, European music training in school. It will reflect the music of Udi people. But it will not reflect your personality, your character, your lived experience. And by so doing, it will not reflect the lived experiences of a greater percentage of Nigerians. And you call it Nigerian music. Today, we know that a greater percentage of the Nigerian community reside in urban centers. Not one culture, not one tribe. And they all interact together to bring up a new lifestyle that accommodates them all, and which the composer is part of. Very rich compositional material can evolve from there. It is already existent. But the composer chose to ignore it for the traditional music. I'm not saying we should jettison the traditional music. I'm saying while we study hip-hop music, while we study traditional music, let's say Igbo of Enugu State, of any community in Igbo land, why can't we study Labaja? While our music, which is Nigerian art music, as we call it, sound like maybe Handel, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, and so on, why can't the same music sound like the music of the bench? The question is also, why can't we employ Nigerian township slangs? Of course, there are a few composers who do that, but not without resistance. Why can't they be part of our music? Why do we choose to maintain the foundation of colonialism cognitively and artistically? In the 21st century, where Nigerian life is actually now in the urban centers, why can't we use the resources from the urban centers, and also combine it with the resources from the rural culture and see what we can come up with. For example, the urban music, some call it the popular music, but popular music is a much broader terminology. The urban music encompasses the way of speaking, even the way of moving on the streets. They all combine to form the music. But because we have been brainwashed that art music is superior to them, we ignore the creativity in these musical genres. We ignore the artistry in these musical genres. We fail to recognize that there are resources we can borrow from these musical genres and make Nigerian art music really Nigerian in the 21st century. Because what we are calling Nigerian art music, most of them are still Western art music, clothed in maybe Nigerian rhythm, maybe texts. And when that happens, the people ignore the work. In fact, I used to say that most of the composers are still writing what I call my work. The very moment we begin to incorporate the daily lived experiences, our own daily lived experiences, which as well is the daily lived experiences of the people around us, then we begin to write what I call our music. For now, we are writing my work. Why? Because we believe that we have to sound like the West. Yes, with the exclusion of a few composers who have tried to sound African, in quotes. Sounding African or Nigerian implies referencing traditional music. And I say that that ideology needs to be broadened in the 21st century. Otherwise, what we'll be reflecting is 20th century and 19th century, which is the foundation, the basis. When the genre was struggling to emerge, it has emerged, but we have refused it from evolving. I don't want to prescribe, like I said in the beginning. What I want to do is to make our conscience alive as creative artists, that the resources for creation of Nigerian art music does not only lie in European art music and in Nigerian traditional music. Even around us, the resources that will represent the 21st century Nigeria abound. And because we are writing what I call my work, the masses are not always keyed into. It's always let them do their thing. Like I used to make a joke in the East. When the choir finishes singing and everybody claps, I said, "Oh, the choir, what a beautiful voice." What did they say? Nobody knows. But the interesting thing is their voices are beautiful. Now, of what use is the music if it's only to be listened to and as a form of entertainment, without the people really keying into it to understand the music? Of course, it can be entertaining, yes. Now, if we come to the 21st century, where we need to make Nigerian art music. I recommend the composers, the older composers, because at that point, when they were composing, Nigeria was evolving from independence and showcasing their culture. And they created an avenue, artistic practice that enabled them to reflect Nigeria at that time. Of course, now it is good to reflect Nigerian cultures. We should also acknowledge that the urban culture is now a reality. So why are other creative artists embracing it, but the Nigerian art music composers seem to reject it? I'll stop here.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you so much, Dr. Chidi. This is quite insightful, thought-provoking, and like they say in this part of the world, sometimes table shaking, or we say table breaker, but let's keep that for a while. I quite appreciate your insightful thought and the ways in which you direct the conversation. But there are a few things that I really want to quickly add, then I'm going to not add, unpack, at least to situate some of the key points of your, thoughtful, well-curated positions. The first one is the notion of urban sound, I think, if I get that correctly. And you make an interesting case that current composers are yet to start exploring, that terrain. Well, I think I agree with you, but also there are composers, perhaps I think I'll get to that. There are composers who have been exploring these layers, and I can give you a few examples, particularly from the Southwest, and I can say in Lagos, the likes of, I'm sure you know the Sheung Owaje, Mr. Sheung Owaje, who is actually known in that area as someone who has you also mentioned Lagbaja, right? Yeah. So Shunwaje belongs to that terrain, exploring contemporary cosmopolitan aesthetics of Lagos. And I can give you an instance. There's a particular composition he wrote, Logic, all those things. For many people on this platform, they know those songs actually, particularly those in the Southwest, where he used, everyday life, so Shunwaje is known for that kind of, exploration. And perhaps maybe we could say is popular for this same reason, because his work is always engaging ongoing themes, modern sound, on the one hand. Number two, where I think I quite appreciate your perspective more is because it's turning towards the notion of decoloniality right now, because Even the works of Shinwo, some will tell you that it is not compositionally inclined because it does not use ground theories of composition. It's not working on motivic development. It's not doing the Beethoven, the whatever style. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You are even, a composition scholar, Uh, so I am not a composition scholar. You know what I'm talking about, all the ground theories of composition, all the big ideas of compositions. So people, many, particularly those in our side, those scholars, we think, oh, the likes of Shonwaye are not composing because they are just writing, because they are using everyday sound. That is problematic, or I think it's a conversation.
Sorry to cut you a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
All those big theories, where are they from?
Well, you said it. They are from somewhere, exported somewhere. For those who brought the composition as a field, for those who brought it, well, yeah, they came with those stuff. And of course, like you said, we've imbibed, we've legitimized all these ideas as our nature, and we have also used it. We are using them to as a yardstick to measure intelligence, to measure modernity, to measure greatness or success for that matter. Because if somebody picks, I'm using Shinwaje because he's the closest to me, or I can even use another composer who is popular in this part. A friend of mine, Kehinde Oretime. I'm sure you have seen many of his contemporary arrangement of this hip-hop sound, on social media. Kenny Oretime, Omababa, whatever. So these categories of writers, of course, locally, they are the interesting thing is that these guys are popular locally. It is when people talk about sound, we need a song. These are the people that people think within a think of an eye. They imagine, can I have a song from Shonwaje? They are like your argument. These are the people that people connect to as soon as possible. If I don't know if that's a good coining, but the ground theories I'm talking about, these are the things that shape our idea of composition, particularly from the scholarly perspective, or I can say the institutionalized idea of composition. And again, let's go to that side. When, as you mentioned, when we perform these kind of songs, people enjoy all the falsetto, all the soprano, all the interesting aesthetics and gymnastic technicalities that we display. But again, if you ask your neighbor or somebody sitting beside you, oh, what did you learn from that song now? All they can say is they can't even pinpoint something, but all they see is that they enjoy all the whoo, of course, which is I don't mean to, this is not a way to undermine my good friends, scholars, singers who are fantastic opera singers. This is not a way. This is like we say, the organ house is critical space where we disentangled uh practice and tradition. That's what we do here. And it's a free space. Anybody can come on board to come and do the same with us. So we are open. So the point is, like you mentioned, people don't see the kind of argument you are making. People don't see it as composition. They see it as gifts. What do you think about that?
Like I said, it all boils down to the foundation we were made to imbibe. First, we were made by the colonialists to understand or to accept, I would say, that European art music is the sublimity of creativity. And we then had composers. Most of the times I feel like the history of the evolution of Nigerian art music is not yet complete. But let's keep that. We now agree agreed or were made to agree or forced to agree, whichever one, that for you to be a musician, you have to model yourself against the European standard. And people modeled themselves against the European standard. But at some point, they understood that their indigenous audience did not understand the music they were writing. So they had to find a way to connect to the indigenous audience. And then we had the translations, we had the writing of hymns in indigenous languages, but still following the European model. So we had, at some point, with the exclusion of some composers, there were some who stood firm that we have to write our own music and not model after European music. But at the end of the day, somehow, they were still forced to model after indigenous European music. Because if you are operating in the church, you must write for 4 parts. And you must be tonal, which I believe African traditional music is not tonal. But that is a question for another day. So by doing that, you are still, on one hand, modeling yourself towards that brainwashing that European art music is a sublimity of musical creativity. Now, fast forward to this present times. We don't believe that a woman, for example, a leader who is leading a singing group and producing new musical lines you haven't heard before, that is actually composing on the spot, because he doesn't have a paper and pen in front of him on the table. So that is not composition, because if you make it composition, then it becomes equal to European art music. So we have to keep it at the second level, if at all the second level if it is enough, so that European music can be composition where this is improvisation. So it is, yes.
Can I ask you, I have a question for you, then perhaps that will lead us to, the general Q or discussion session. Now,
Yes.
I'm happy that you are seated there, somewhere in your office. I'm sure you are a trained composer, doctor of composition, this and that and that and that. So you are in a best position to answer this question. So I'm starting it directly. So as a composer, a trained composer for that matter, do you see, how do you explain the difference between a songwriter and a composer on the one hand, and the difference between somebody who produces music, like a producer who produce, put songs, everything, generate, and make good album all by himself? Is the one that who wrote the song, who generate the bass line and crafted all the process, which is the same thing that a composer writing on paper, orchestration would do in a different sense. What is your take? This is a long-standing controversy and argument and debate across spaces. Those who went to university never believe, or they have never agreed or consented that somebody who writes songs, who arrange songs, and who produce songs every day can be called a composer. So who is a composer?
I'm going to answer this question the other way around. You see the drama that happens every day in Nigeria. The people who went to school, who studied music, let me say in church, does not believe that a musician, I don't want to say a local musician, let's say in the church, a choir master who has been a choir master for maybe 30 years or 40, may have a deeper knowledge of that practice than the person who went to school. You went to school, for example, and you studied 14 courses as an undergraduate. This person has been studying one course for 30 years. So how do you compare your knowledge to his? What you know is how to speak English and mention musical terms. But when it comes to practice, he might not know the musical terms, but he knows how it is done. And this happens a lot when you go to traditional music practitioners. They don't have the musical terms you have. You intimidate them with, but they know how it is done. And they know when you are not doing it right.
In fact, can I quickly interrupt you? They actually have their own idea of musical terms, what
Yes.
to navigate. So what we
Yes.
as the so-called scholar take to them is our inherited colonial terms.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
I just want to put that.
Yes. And we impose it to them instead of allowing them to discuss with us. So that is exactly what is happening here. I've been opportune to work in these three spaces. I still do. And I don't see the difference between the three of them, except medium. A songwriter, as you call it, writes a song. And now that brings me to another point. Collaboration. We do not collaborate in art music. A songwriter writes a song. You call him a songwriter, right?
Yeah.
He takes it to a producer. The producer adds his idea. He does not say, I went to music school. The producer will be very angry with you and say, I have been in this job for so long. You and your music school counts for nothing. And you listen to the music he's going to produce, you affirm that he has the experience. So the songwriter writes a song, as we call it. But remember why he's writing the song. He's also writing the tune. Because he doesn't just write words on paper. And he takes it to a producer. The producer says, this line melody is not so good. Do this and do that. And then he starts instrumentation and so on. That's two. Then they come to the media. By the media, I don't mean the television, and they come to the visual artists who will polish you. They come to the costumier who will tell you what kind of clothes to wear, the lighting, and everything. At the end of the day, what we hear is one artist, but it is a collaboration between so many artists. So our idea is still within the idea of trying to be the superior in a world that no longer recognizes you as a superior because the world has changed. And you refuse to change with the world. And the world, the system might gradually throw you out.
Yeah. So I think at this level, I already have I think a few hands up there. So thank you so much, Dr. Obijiaku. Thank you so much for
Welcome.
I like the way you open this conversation, which is the kind of things we do on this platform. We tend to create our own narrative. We create ways to things, and I'm happy the way you went about it. So let me invite the first person I can see already. Is this Mr. Gani Kale?
It is indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, Dr. Ayo, and good afternoon, our I don't even know which term to use to address you right now because you actually make my day. Anyone who knows me will know that I will be dancing to a lot of rhythm for everything you've been saying. I actually wrote a paper recently that is basically everything you've been talking about today. Yeah, I understand. I mean, where do I even start? Is it from the issue of who is a composer and the arranger and songwriter, etc.? That's even, you know, another big issue to talk about on its own. But without losing focus, I would like to address your main points in this presentation. Yeah, I just want to start by saying you are not alone at all. If you think you're probably going to be getting followers or something, no. You are not alone at all. There are thousands of people, scholars, musically minded people who are thinking exactly the way you are thinking. Even though you have started by saying you don't come to rebuke, you just come to express what you have in your mind and hope that people will see from your point of view. Yeah, but I don't take that approach. I actually come with sledgehammer on this issue because I am very, very passionate about it. Because it is more than high time to dismantle the colonial echo chamber. You know, and I'm happy that you started the way you started. Everything you have not said anything wrong. The Nigerian popular music, in all its vibrancy and innovation and global resonance, it's evolving at a pace that academic institutions can only dream of matching. It is not bogged down by the dead weight of Eurocentric formalism or the suffocating rigidity of imported aesthetic paradigms. It is urban, as you've rightly pinpointed. It is immediate. It is owned by the people. That is why it speaks to them, because I pick a lot from what you have said tonight, this afternoon. It reflects the people's life, the people's joy, the people's struggle, the people's wit, and their dreams. And most importantly, it is unashamedly Nigerian. So, by contrast, the African-based Music Academy has become a sterile vault for outdated Western ideals and disconnected from the cultural pulse of the society it claims to serve. You know, it is shameful that in the 21st century, African music scholars continue to bow at the altar of European classic music, clutching desperately to notations, to tonal systems, to pedagogies that were never designed for African expression in the first place. This is not education. It is erasure. And I am unapologetic at saying this. I say this with my chest full blown. You know, the institutions that claim to preserve and promote African musical heritage have instead become the chief agents of its marginalization.
Yeah.
They teach African students that true musicianship lies in the mastery of European instruments, of European theory and European history. That was how we were taught. You know, they buried our local instrument under dust and disdain. They classify our rhythms as primitive, our improvisation as unrefined, and our musical logic as intuitive, which, by the way, is an euphemism for inferior.
Sorry, let me cut you a bit before you continue. There is another ideology that when you finish studying, where exactly do you operate? Because that actually shapes the mind of who we produce as graduates.
Sure.
Where do you work? And most of our teachers will tell us there's churches, there's orchestras, there's broadcasting. Let's just name them: institutional, European, institutionalized. They're not talking about you can be a producer. They're not talking about you can be a freelancer. You know, all those, they're not even talking about you can be an arranger for films.
Well,
you know, all those commercial things.
Yeah, I think what we need to look at in the first place is what kind of students were recruited to study music. You know, I mean, in my own time, when I got admitted to the University of Nigeria in the mid-80s, there were a lot of people that have never touched pianos that came for audition and they sang. You know,
no,
you understand? And people who their first experience of music theory is when they start introducing them to treble clef and bass clef in the classroom. You know, so how do you expect such people and people who can't even sing that come to study music?
Yeah,
you know,
the idea or the modus of operation was when you don't qualify for any course,
yeah, I see.
then they push you to music.
Exactly. You know, anyway, with all this narrative, with all this we're talking about, Nigerian popular music thrives. That is the one that's been regulated. You know, it leads to a cultural revolution across the continent and beyond. It carries with it its rhythm, the dialects, the idioms, the performance style rooted in indigenous heritage that has been neglected. It speaks to the masses, not the ivory tower. It innovates without permission. It fuses without apology. And it has done more to globalize African sound than 1,000 journal articles on conference panels. Yep. And yet, the academy looks down its nose at it, claiming it commercial, calling it unserious, calling it beneath art. I mean, let us be clear. If African music academia is serious about decolonization, about relevance, about survival, then it must submit itself to the lesson of the street, lesson of the club, the studio, and the stage. Nigerian popular music, not European canon, should be the foundation of African music training. Our institutions must recognize that true art is not measured by proximity to Vienna or Paris, you know, but by resonance within our communities. Until then, the academy remains a colonial museum with delusions of grandeur, an echo chamber or for the past, terrified of the present, and unworthy of the future. I mean, I'm sorry I'm using very these strong terms, but this is exactly the way I feel. And this is what I think we need to be saying to ourselves. Otherwise, we will continue to remain unchanging, and we will continue to talk until our great-grandchildren meet us on the same narrative, just as we are meeting our old grandfathers of musicologists, still talking about the same thing, you know? So, I mean, well, I am happy with this, and I'm happy that I'm able to find a time to participate in today's discussion. So I just want to say that you are not alone, sir. You are not alone in this discussion at all. Thousands of people are backing you up. I mean, there is so much that we can do. Let's take our traditional genre one by one and begin to approach it from scientific point of view. This is when we can really, truly discover ourselves and be emancipated from the mental slavery.
Wow.
Anyway.
Thank you so much. Okay, friends and colleagues online, yes, the table is open. You are free to use your mic. Don't forget, this space is free. You are welcome to jump in with your ideas. No one is going to run after you. Don't forget. So please use the mic, raise your hand, and we'll be happy to have you. It's an open floor now. Perhaps you have questions, queries, or you want to advance the conversation with Dr. Chidi Obijiaku. You are welcome to do so, please. Okay. Okay, we have Mudubegi. Let's have you, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, Dr. Ayorinde. Good afternoon, Dr. Obijiaku. Thank you so much for this very thought-provoking, insightful conversation. Dr. Gani Kale, I greet you. Thank you for being a constant at these seminars. Dr. Obijiaku, I agree with you because it's sad that a country as vibrant as Nigeria, with all our forms of music, like you have said, and like Mr. Ganikale has said, has done much more for the image of the country, has done much more for, just popularizing. I mean, Nigeria is a giant everywhere. Everybody wants to do a collabo with a Nigerian artist. We're in the spotlight, and we have been in the spotlight for a while. It's sad that our institutions have not gotten the memo yet, I have a lot of thoughts and musings in my head. Well, first thing is, the truth is, you cannot rise. There's a lot of power play that is going on in our institutions. They tend to gatekeep a lot of destiny and and they cannot rise beyond their agency. This is as far as they know, and they sit on it, and they do not let anyone else come close. Okay, I agree with you, and I share this sentiment. I think what I want to ask, if I can just bring all my thoughts together, is, so what's the way forward? Because you see, Dr. Obijiaku, I know you're not in Nigeria. Mr. Ganikale, you are not in Nigeria. Those of us who are a part of these institutions do not have the power or the agency to make these changes. As much as we are burning with all of this, heaviness, and we really do want to do something, what would you suggest is the way forward? Because I know, like Dr. Ayorinde has said, we've had a couple of very creative people try their hands on, doing a lot of experimentation with urban popular music, and Nigerian if I say Nigerian art music, just experimentations, and they are quite good. But is that enough? Because I know that even if we do what's it called? We perform these things. We do a lot of experimentations until it is institutionalized, until it is taught in our universities. You need to put a lot of theory behind the practice. So if our institutions don't accept it, what do we do? What is the way forward, quite frankly? That's what I want to ask. And number two, I also want to say, I don't know whether you have done any kind of experimentations with urban music, and Nigerian art music. Is there something we can listen to? What is your vision when you're talking about sorry, I wrote down some notes. When you talk about urban art music, Nigerian urban art music, what do you envision? Do you have something that you've already done that we can listen to so we can even have an idea of, what it can sound like? I don't know if I've made myself clear. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, so many movements in art music in Europe started with a group of people determined to change the status quo. That is one. The second one is, if the revolution does not come from inside, start it from outside. Now I'm going to tell you a story. I once had a chorale which I disbanded when I came here to South Africa. But I had a teacher who has a chorale, and she saw the composition potentials in me when I was in third year. Through the assignments she gave me to write for her chorale, whether good or bad, they perform it like that. I grew on that aspect. Now in 2020, something happened. I've been writing for him, and from there we went to All Saints Cathedral on Nature, where she is the music director. Ngozi Okonkwo, you may know her. So it happened that I wrote a song in 2019, if I remember. So the song contained some rap in it. They did not perform it. Why? Because nobody could teach it. What did I do? Now to the question of who is composing and who is not composing. It's just to take the style of popular music or urban music, a music that is not notated, and put it in a notated form. And immediately, please forgive the background noise if you can still hear me. So immediately, choir masters could no longer teach the choir. But it is music, put on paper. In fact, it was when I came back, because the song was for a program, an award program, but COVID destroyed it. So it was when I came back, I had to teach the song myself. And they said, oh, we said, wow, it's a good song. But they couldn't teach it. Now, the first time I wrote for All Saints Cathedral Choir, it was a choral work. Contained Igbo, contained Yoruba, contained English, contained German, and contained Pidgin. So, the first time I wrote for All Saints Cathedral, they refused to perform it. And the only reason why they performed it was that the music director told me to remove my name. That she would tell them who composed it after they have performed it. And after they performed it, she told them. Till date, till today, I'm still the resident composer of All Saints. You know what they tell me each time? Please do it that way you do it. There's a saying in my language that if a child refuses to eat beans, you make it into my mind. And at the time, he will recognize that it is beans he has been eating. He said, it's okay since that he doesn't eat. Very, very recently. In fact, about a month ago, I wrote a song for them. And I gradually added something. In fact, I borrowed something from Flavor's music. Said, which one is this? I kept quiet. Said, perform it. They performed that song on stage. They received a big gift. Not the money they were paid. In fact, I got my own share of the gift. But I look back at where it all started. With the resistance and never giving up. Because this is what I want. And I know that this, if I push this, there's a possibility of it going forward. So, first, if you're a composer, if it's a choral music you are a fan of, get a choral group. If you are an orchestral composer, get a group of orchestral instrument players. They might find it very difficult at first, but with time, they will enjoy to come. Don't worry, tell them to perform at their dinner night, convocation, whatever, for free. No problem. One day, somebody will say, what is that band saying? What is that orchestra saying?
No, I just wanted them to just tell him that I agree.
That's one. Two is politics. This one is outside politics. Another one is an internal politics. When you have a group that wants something, they do what? They put their own in the head. It might not be through violence, no. Just little by little, you draw people to your side.
Usually it's just with
and finally, one day it will happen like a miracle.
Well, no, we don't know.
It sounds as if it's a fairy tale, but it works all the time. You have to be political. and wait for your moment while you work. You don't push once and say, hey, okay, I can't push again. The system is bad. Yes, it is bad. I don't know if I attempted your question.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Kwesi and Dr. Obijiaku. Now, the question again, while we are waiting for others to ask questions, please, you are welcome to ask Dr. Obijiaku if you have question. If there are things you need clarification, please, you are welcome to do so. Or there are things within this particular conversation you want to advance also, or you want to also engage, particularly the difference between writing something on paper and training with Western Western pedagogue, the history from the Norman or Western European music sensibilities, theories, all the grand theories, and writing. Like what I think I like the way Dr. Obijiaku puts it, my composition and our composition. Yeah. So this, I think, for me is quite interesting. And I would like to see if there are people who want to expand on this, because some in the, institutionalized ideas of composition, it is, of course, out there across institutions, also in Nigeria, that to be a composer, you need to counterpoint, tonal counterpoint, all this big grammar, which is, of course, is there. And like you explained, most of these things have their own value and everything has their own value. But the school of thought within the compositional framework doesn't believe that those out there are actually trained composers. So it's, for me, again, to Dr. Obijiaku. So is the training in the counterpoint what makes a composer, or the ability to communicate an aesthetics resources in a coherent way? I mean, somebody, like you said, you engage, what's the name, that Favor, using his resources to create something, and people loved it, and it garnered some attention. And perhaps if you had used back counterpoint, Palestinians' ideas, of modality, or even the, neoclassic school of thought, Arnold Schoenberg, the avant-garde composers. I don't know if people will have said that to you, but what do you think? I just want to know, because this conversation has been around, and I really want to know what you think about it.
First of all, let me elaborate on your work and our music. Your work, by definition, according to me, is a prescription from the composer to the masses. Because I went to school, whatever I give you, you must take it. Because I have a superior opinion. As this music, you don't have a say. But your masses actually are the people who have the say. Our music is that when you sit on that table to write, for example, if you are writing, you allow the experiences of the masses to speak to you. And in doing so, the music that comes up considers the lived experiences of the masses, which you are part of, but ignorantly choose to ignore. So you came to prescribe to them, forgetting what it's just like, for example, somebody who is in struggle for independence, for example, a country who is in struggle for independence, all the music produced at that time channeled towards freedom. Even Nigerian art music at some point did it. But how come that we are now prescribing? When you prescribe to the masses, they will not respond to you because they say that one person cannot cook for the masses, but the masses can cook for one person. And one person cannot finish the food. But if one person cook for the masses, they will finish the food and demand more. So if you prescribe for them, they will go to the one that actually recognizes their aspirations. Let's leave that aside for now. Counterpoint does not make a composer. I don't know how straight I can answer that, but that is my straight answer. Counterpoint is like a person learning how to be a native doctor. That you got leaves from the forest for your master does not make you a native doctor. You get the leaves, you will learn how to put the leaves together. But the problem with us is that the learning of composition resides in Western knowledge. And because it resides in Western knowledge, when we finish, we think like white people. Can you imagine that in the 21st century, somebody is still writing like Landon and Bach? Yes, you learned counterpoint from Bach, but you are no longer in Bach's society. Use the counterpoint you learn to reflect what is happening in the present times. Counterpoint does not and can never make a. What was the second question?
I think that perhaps the second one is the ideas notions around compositional theories. What do you think? What's your take? Of course, you are a scholar, you are a composer, a PhD holder, you've done all the work. What's your take on compositional theories?
Okay. They are there to guide you.
Okay.
But they are not there to make you slaves of them. All these theories, many people have passed through them, but yet we have different kinds of music. But we all learned from the same theory. Most, even the Westerners who teach us, we all learned from the same theory. Schenkerian theory has been there for ages. But the music we have shows our knowledge of that, but not a slavery or a slave of that. Because if we are all slaves of one theory or theories that are existent, then we will all produce the same music or the music that is sounding the same. But that is basically what composers have been doing all over the world. Yes, I know the theory. You have to know the rule to know how to bend them. So I have to know the theory as a foundation to developing my own voice. Before you begin to speak in a political party, you must have been there for some time to understand how it works. I don't know if I answered you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Let's go to Dr. Joseph, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me. Thank you, guest presenter, and our host, MTU, Dr. Ayorinde, and others. I came in, I must, yes, admit that I came into the presentation late, but I think towards your responses and some of the comments I made, and having read the abstract into your lecture, I would go back to listen, but there are a few comments that from your responses and from the questions which I think your presentations must have generated. Your position and responses tend to point to some issues like context, processes, agency, power, politics within, the creative composition as creative process in music. And even that the ideas of notion of creativity is also being challenged again from which domain are you looking at it from? If you look at cultural creativity, and how scholars are beginning to consider the notion of creativity and cultural improvisation, how we can begin to challenge Western hegemony of composition as whether it is following Western theory or not. So what I'm saying in essence is that we have to put all of this in perspective. Yes, I agree with you that, and you pointed out very strongly that you have to know the rules to break the rules. I think we should not lose sight of that. That even within creative processes, ideas can be, established and can be de-established. So I like your point, the point you raised on the fact that there should be some agency, which which is very important, which means that even though this is the normative idea of composition, but I still have my agency to say this is the way I want to go. You understand? Just like like Olufemi Taiwo did say that in this whole issue of decolonization, that people have their agency even while the colonial powers and forces systems were still in place. People choose to write, and he cited the example of Wole Soyinka and Fagunwa, who at the same period were exposed to this same context, but choose to express themselves differently, which means that even while people learn Western compositional theory, people still have the liberty to do what they want to do. That's the point I'm making. And so, but again, the issue of context is also very important. You are able to experiment with what you experiment in at All Saints Onitsha because of the permit me to put it, because of the urban nature of that space, and then Pidgin, Igbo language, and others. So what happens in the for a composer who wants to experiment in the north? What happens to a composer who wants to experiment in South? So I think it's also important that people, maybe in our compositional classes or workshops, that people should also understand the context of their writing. You understand that choir, you are able to, you understand them, you understand their language, you know what is permissible, even within the context of freedom. You also know what is permissible. So I think that we should also put in context. Then the process, which growing composers need to be guided. Well, I had one of the participants say that our institutions are gatekeeping and all that. That may not be entirely true, because the institutions also work within a particular framework. NUC, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. What we can encourage is to say, can teachers, composition teachers, can they begin to, like Professor Vida said, this is the structural, that is what it should be taught. But I will also teach you the functional. I remember Professor Vida telling us that as an undergraduate student. He said, I'm going to teach you the structural. This is what the syllabus says we should teach. But within the context of the structural, I'm also going to expose you to the functional. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So I think we can encourage teachers, composition teachers, to say, yes, while you teach what is within the framework of the curriculum, can you also inject, can you also make a dynamic, outcome of these classes using what will be functional? Because what you are doing and others, I mean, I'm sure like in Southwest, we have Shim and others, it's also trying to bring in the functional. What can function within the context? You still use your 5 lines and 4 spaces, which is also structural in a sense. So what I'm saying is that we need to strike a balance between the context of composition, what is the process, and then the agency, you as a composer, what do you want to push? And then very lastly is the ideas of politics, which I know, I think everybody will learn it on the go, as you have rightly done. So I just want to say well done, and that we can keep this conversation going, different contexts for, especially those who are coming, who are trying to do a lot of experimentation with composition. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ajose. I think before Dr. Chidi Obijiaku, before you respond, I also want to add one point to that so you can address everything together. Then we can now go for Temitope Walade, Dr. Oluranti. Yeah, so the point then is, I'm happy you outline or made so clear the idea of being a master of a theory before breaking the theory. Now, the theory we're talking about is there are those theories we inherited, according to you, from our colonial, and also Mr. Gani Kale said it earlier, from the colonial epistemologies, But the question is, can't the scholars, the composers teaching composition in Africa or Nigeria, to be specific, look for theories within indigenous or popular music, like you said, according to your own perspective now, to teach equivalent of those theory, or bring together this grand theory from Europe, because that's where the idea of composition came from, and bring local theories and create a kind of fusion to create a new understanding of composition that privileges our colonial heritage and also privileges the functional, to use Dr. Ajose's work. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm leaving it to you.
First of all, the idea of composition did not come from Europe, but let me react to actually. I don't know if we all see what is happening in the Nigerian gospel industry. Nigerian gospel industry, the north is not a strong area for Christianity. But the music of the Nigerian gospel industry goes round, even to the north, even to the Christians in the north. They appreciate it. And look at the code switching. Pidgin is there, Yoruba is there, English is there. Nigerian has had this multilinguality, and it is acceptable. It's a way of bonding in the country. I cannot agree that there is a place you go to and you present a song in multiple languages, including the language of the place. If you don't know it, you can learn it. For the purpose of the composition, that is research. Learn their language, for example, and incorporate it. There is no way, there is no place that will reject it. So I believe, because actually the questions I composed were a national service. It was a national service, so how the whole country was there. And that it's not like first time. So I believe Nigerians are bonded by that multilinguality. They celebrate it, even though Pidgin is like a common language. I don't believe there's a place you will perform in a multilingual way, for example, and you will be chased out. That is exactly what gospel, in fact, it started in the West. Started in the West, the Redeemed, I think the first I had was the Redeemed Church. Gospel thing, years back. And people like it, irrespective of where you come from. But had it been it was in Yoruba and English, it was still, people will still like it, but it will not speak. Come and see how they dance to the music in the East, as if it's their own. You see it. So, back to your question. Sorry, I lost the question.
Okay.
What was your, yeah.
Mine wasn't more of a question. I just say it's also wasn't so much of a question, but what I was trying to also clear
Oh,
is the kind of theory. Yeah,
yes.
foundational theories of composition. Can't scholars also look inward into Nigerian culture and look for equivalent or something even more sophisticated to theorize, to teach composition formally? Or can they bring the together from Western idea of theory, then also with indigenous ideas, and create something contemporary for our students to create new learning ideas that brings together different ideas?
Yes, it can happen. I belong to this school of thought that theories come after events. Events can be performance, events can be practice, events can, otherwise, we'll be working with prescriptions. But we have to be careful not to isolate ourselves from the world, in as much as we have to develop our own voice and strongly to match other global voices. I'm an equivalent that as we have theories that govern our study of composition, of course, education system which we pass through is Western oriented. But I believe that we have to develop an education that is relevant to our society as well. So, development of theories from African perspective have to start after we have started implementing them. We don't just write prescriptions and then go implement them. It is from the implementation that we document, and then we find out in time, in terms of review of the theory. But I don't believe that we are going to write a prescription, then begin to implement it.
Okay, let's go to Dr. Laurent.
Hello. Nice to see you,
sir.
Nice to see you, sir. Yes. But two things I picked from the responses, and the first one is easy. The second one Maybe we have to put on our boxing gloves on that. Of course, we are used to this terrain of agreeing and disagreeing and beating ourselves up. On this issue, the first one, which is the easy one, we're talking about my work, your work, and things like that. And it sounds to me that, or I should ask you, as a composer, within your creative process, are you supposed to be mindful of your imaginary audience? Are you to be driven by what is appreciated in your society, or be driven by your innermost creativity? And if you are to be sensitive to your immediate environment, wouldn't that place a kind of limitation on you? I mean, I can imagine if every composer out there, a trained composer out there, is to
Hello?
live in Nigeria and compose within
Hello?
the environment. Wouldn't that just place a limitation on your creativity? So what are your views on this?
There is something we were told when we were doing melodic writing. I said a melody can come to you, but with your own. And what I'm going to teach you now, the professor said, what I'm going to teach you now, you will form it to sound better. Now, when the idea of the masses comes in, it doesn't mean you will lift the idea completely. Your training also still has to come into it. But at the end of the day, the masses will still recognize what you did, and your expertise as a composer will still be present. That's how I'm looking at it. It is not completely leaning into what the masses want, but it has to be a balance between your training and the lived experiences of the masses. Otherwise, I think you might be prescribing, like your work, Forgotten the Opera, the title. Your work, which I listened to and watched, was professional, compositionally. But it still speaks to you, the Yoruba culture and the Yoruba masses. There is no Yoruba person who will not understand, even though there might be some choruses that are not from the culture, which I think the last one, which you referenced, like Highlife. But everybody who listens or watches that work will see the expertise there, compositional, but also we see what impact, how it influences the public. If I perform the opera in a public place in Yoruba land, for example, you will see the reaction. I don't need to be told, even though it is art music.
Now, you see this idea of engaging the masses. I I mean, and thinking of the masses, thinking of others is very scary to me in the sense that, you see, when you look at the masses, at Oshodi, for example, it will be different from the masses on the streets in South Africa. And you live at an age where whatever you do goes into the global space immediately. You could have written for a specific audience, the masses, defined by a specific society, you know. But once the music is published, it's performed, and then with the influence of social media, the world is a global village. The music is going to go around, and you see, the concept of taste and what people understand and they don't understand varies from even within Nigeria alone. It varies. And you see, I've had to, I mean, this is something I've had to, it's been a problem for me, especially from 2017. And when I had the opportunity to, you know, really, I mean, I changed. I mean, I came to Nigeria, I was more in Nigeria, and I discovered that I was not communicating with my compositions, you know, the new ones that I was writing then, even at MTU. I remember we had a program, I composed fresh music, and they were knocked down. That, I mean, they're too academic, you know, that kind of thing, you know. And that would probably have been accepted elsewhere. So going back to my table, I'm like, oh, how should you think? Should we be writing locally? And say, okay, you write this music for these people, and write this music for those people, and how do you proceed? Or we just go the way of Milton Babbitt. Who cares who listens? Write it, it's from your heart. Even if that particular set or the masses you have in mind, they don't appreciate it. Who knows? They may appreciate it. They may learn to appreciate it in 10 years' time. Because that's another thing, which even happens to all of us. You listen to a piece of music at first, you don't have a sense of what is happening there. You listen to it 10 times, 20 times, then you begin to learn how to appreciate it. And which is one of my basic concerns, that if we limit ourselves to the taste of the society will not go, you know. So if I may go to the second one, the second issue, Dr. Ayorinde asked you a question, your experience with compositional theories. And your response, you know, through me, I started thinking, okay, we have to be careful here, because it appeared like, and I think probably when Dr. I just said to talk, it appeared like we're treating compositional theories as a set of theories that are stacked up somewhere that you can, you know, you can knock on the doors of these theories and say, can I use you? I'm not going to use you. You know, can we do this? Can I use these theories? And you know, like it's there's some sort of entity on there. Oh, you get it, you know. And I'm now thinking, is that the notion? Is that an African notion of what composition is, or the compositional process? Now you say you have a compositional process, and you are knocking on the door of compositional theories, you know. And I asked this question because the late Professor Yuba, I mean, at the tail end of his life, he said something that really disturbed me. He said the notion of composition in the West is different from the notion of composition in Africa. And he said a composer in Africa is different from a composer in the West. You know, so that notion of, oh, you have compositional theories that you can learn how to be, is that the notion of composition in Africa. Because from the training of some of us, we see composition through the eyes of the West, which is not what that is. The notion of composition in the West is that composition is theoretical. Composition itself, the process of creating the music, is theoretical. It's not that you are consulting certain theories. So in essence, I can create a new piece of music without having a knowledge of counterpoint, having a knowledge of this so-called caged compositional theories, and move in a systematic manner. Because in fact, that is what composition is all about now. You know, the mechanical aspect, how you lay things out. So as soon as you create the music, you said something. As soon as you create the music, theory follows it. I'll give an example. Ayorinde composed a song, a solo. Jowo, Baba Jowo, it's a prayer. And there was something interesting that he did. For his tonal center, he avoided the use of the home chord, the tonal chord, in its root position. And that became a compositional root for that piece. And that became a theological framework, which he created himself. And that's the notion of composition in the West. You create your structure, and after that, you can analyze it. After that, anybody else can analyze it and theorize it, because the compositional process is theoretical. That's a notion different from, oh, you have a set of theories that you can consult. So my question is, I mean, because ordinarily I would have said, I would have gone against you. I said, look, I don't agree with you. But these days, I'm learning first that to know that maybe all these things that happen in Africa, we can say, oh, we are Africans. This is the way we are. This is what we do. And then we can create our theories. In fact, that's what is happening in Nigeria in any case. You know, we just do our stuff and we don't care what is happening in the rest of the world. And we're saying, this is who we are. So these are two opposing views as to what composition is. And if I may add, from my, very limited understanding, I believe personally that one of the reasons why the concept of art music has not really evolved in Africa is because we don't understand musical composition to be a theoretical process. We are still leaning on the fact that, you create music from improvisation, work of talent. 90% of the compositions coming out of Africa, they are works of talent. People don't think of structure. You get it? And I always like to, draw this a parallel between, the architecture of a house and the architecture of music. You like it or not, once you have a structure, you build a structure, there's something working within it theoretically, which is structural. Once you have it, whether you have an architect who designed it, or you have a structural engineer involved or not, who knows what they're doing, or you just have some sort of bricklayers putting bricks together. So basically, there's always, that is what analysis does for us. When you look at a piece of music, you can look at it into DNA and unearth the theoretical framework. So I was saying, this is not the notion. Are we building on the notion that now Igbo gets compositional theory, lock it up, and let's just do what we want to do. So that's, I don't know whether you get this tension, this dichotomy I'm talking about. So, well, what's your disposition on this?
First of all, before you came in, I think we've mentioned something along those lines. The notion of composition as put to us by the West is different. In fact, I made an example with, let's say, Handel and a woman who is a strong leader in, let's say, in a village in Africa or in Nigeria. The woman produces the song, teaches the group, but it doesn't write anywhere. Do we say she's not composing? The entire repertoire of the group is in her brain. And she is the generator of the songs the group sings. Yet, there is no place to write. It's not writing anything. She is a composer in Africa. And maybe if we call her to interview her what her composing process or what her ideas are about composition, it might be different. Let me use might. It might be different from what a Westerner will tell you. And in my own thought, I don't look at theory as a place where we can go and select something and then use it. We learn different theories for us to know how things have been done. And also from there, we can develop our own voice, not copying the theory. But the theory helps us to develop a voice and know how things have been done in the past. So in a way, I do not think on a personal ground that theory is a storehouse where you go and grab resources to compose.
Now,
But
yeah, on that example, maybe it will be helpful for us to kind of narrow things down and have a better picture of what we're talking about. You cited the example of the woman who just creates music, ordinarily on the streets in Nigeria. Is she a composer or not? She's a composer, yes. Okay. And in the West, let's get it right, we also have people like that who can just do anything, put music to them. Yes, they are composers. Okay. But what we are on about here is the activity of the trained composer. I mean, we shouldn't bother ourselves with the untrained composer. At any rate, everybody's a composer, but we're talking about our activity as Africans, okay, as trained composers. What's the focus of our training in academia as Africans, and that's the way we can look at things so that we can compare not apples with oranges. So yes, we have non-professional composers in the Western system too, but we're looking at the activity of the trained composer in the West as against in Africa. What's the notion about these theories and things like that? More importantly, which I'm now sounding like a broken record because I keep saying it. If Steve Reich can go to Ghana and watch people draw, they were just doing their thing, and he could extract a theory from it. Do you get it? And then reproduce music. What does that tell us as trained composers? it tells you that this our traditional music is theoretical. There's substance to it. The late Willie Anku, he developed, this set theory to unravel the mind of the master drummer. And if you follow that process through, if you've never been a master drummer yourself, you will discover that you can use that theoretical framework to create music that the drummer would have played. Okay? If you look at what's his name? What's this piece by Joshua Zogwe, Ukam? Ukam is a traditional genre, with its own 10-row instruments and things. He went into it, he extracted the whole concept. On the piano, we have 12 pitch classes, right? And they're all 88 keys and they're premised on that. But Joshua Zogwe was able to use the piano in a minimalist way, messing around with only, I think, 5 or 6 pitch classes, extracting again theory from our traditional genre. So these are the things that baffle me, that we have these things there. So why as Africans we want to latch on to the concept of, what Akinyubo said, that we are different. We just create music. There's no theory in it. We just create music. But whereas that thing that we're doing, we just don't understand what we're doing. There's theory to it. So this issue is about what we should be thinking of. Approach to composing as Africans, and what we should be, I don't know what I should say we should be thinking. I'm just saying the things that bother me anyway, and because I just think as we have it in so many other spheres of our existence in Africa, we have unending, untapped resources. And it really hurts me as a person that our traditional resources, they are untapped. We don't understand them. They're theoretical. They're things that we can exhaust in the next 50, 100, 200 years. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much.
May I please respond to that, Dr. Ayo?
Okay.
May I please respond to that quickly?
Dr. Chidi will round it off, then we can go for today. Thank you.
Yeah. Somehow this has become a very deep issue that we are addressing today. And so many has been said that a lot I really want to say in between. But let me just talk about this issue of composition and composer and stuff. Historically, the word composer carries with it a lot of Eurocentric baggage. It is tied to the classical tradition where music was written in notation, analyzed in conservatories, and revered as high art. In that world, the composer sat at the top, often separate from performers and songwriters or producer. But in modern African music, especially across Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, etc., the boundaries are fluid. The Afrobeat producer who lays down a drum groove, who samples a Highlife guitar lick and arranges a horn section and tweaks the mix, is composing, even if they never touch staff notation. The juju or Fuji band leader who invents melodic lines, directs rhythm sections, and spontaneously reshapes arrangements during performance, he is also composing in real time. The gospel singer who pens lyrics and sings melodies, harmonizes them, and arranges backing vocals and oversees production, is both songwriter, composer, and producer, even without a conservatory label. So the term composer risks being hegemonic when it excludes or delegitimizes these forms of creation simply because they don't fit Western formalism. So, I mean, instead, you know, the presenter did say that we write prescriptions and implement them. And then said it is from the implementation that we document, and then we find out the review terms. I'm just trying to paraphrase from how I remember what you've said, sir. You know, Dr. Oluranti, I believe that our inspirations come from our orientation. And that is the unmatched beauty of Nigeria's diversity. I think we can arrive at a natural conclusion if we address an earlier question that was asked on this platform, the question that says, what is the way forward? You know, this is not a merely rhetorical question. It is existential. If we agree that our current academic system is disoriented from our society's music life, and we have to agree on that first before we can make progress. And if we agree, then we must also agree that reform is not optional, it is overdue. And the way forward is multi-pronged and strategic. And it must involve bold rethinking of content and structure. I personally am thinking of certain steps, you know, that we can follow to arrive at this. The long-term thing is not going to happen immediately. I mean, there is something called benchmark minimum academic standard, you know, that is BMAS for music. And it needs to include core courses on Nigerian popular music, indigenous music theory, and as well as local performance practices. And why? Because what is core to the street should be core to the syllabus. If Fela, Fuji, and Afrobeats aren't academically studied, then academia is not studying Nigeria. The immediate action we need to take should include, we need to establish instrument labs in universities dedicated to the research, the construction, the standardization, and the digital preservation of Nigerian instruments, the Igba, the Bata, the Udu, Goje, Kakaki, etc. And why? Because a country that cannot teach its instruments at the highest level cannot claim cultural sovereignty. You know, we need to bridge academy-industry divide. We need to introduce industry-based internship, studio practice courses, and guest lectures. We need to invite practicing producers to give as guest lecturers in our schools. We need to invite artists and engineers within the curriculum. And why? Because the current system trains students for a music world that no longer exists. We must reconnect theory to practice. Our institution and funding agencies should prioritize research grants that investigate Nigerian popular music and its social, economic, and political implications. Why? Because the streets are producing, like I said before, the streets are producing the music. Scholars should be producing the knowledge. We need to restructure academic promotion systems to recognize work on local music forms as equally valuable as Western musicology or theory. Because if a PhD on Yoruba Dodo drumming has less weight than one on Debussy's harmonies, the system is complicit in cultural erasure. And that's a fact. Anybody that wants to debate me on that is welcome. Every music department should maintain active indigenous and contemporary music ensemble alongside choirs and orchestra, because performance is scholarship. If it is not performed, it cannot be preserved or evolved. So we have to introduce reorientation programs and sabbatical fellowships that expose faculty to new research in African center pedagogy and current music industry trend, because a colonized teacher, and I repeat, a colonized teacher cannot decolonize a curriculum.
Yeah.
So,
Please just
I think.
Thank you so
but just one line. Let me respond to Mr. Ganikala's what you just talked about now. You see, it's just as Professor Agao said at some times that we're tired of, we should be tired of, this is what we should be doing, this is what we should do. You see, everything Mr. Ganikala has said in the last 1, 2, 3 minutes, the likes of making Zewi, Akinyuba,
yeah.
all of them, they've been saying it before we were born. Yeah? This is what we should do. This is what we should do. The truth of the matter is that we are a dysfunctional society. And the biggest problem we have is our colonization. And we can't get rid of it. So if we want these things, these changes to occur, Mr. Ganikale, it must be through the private systems, private institutions. I mean, when I say private systems, by individual efforts, by having, simply put, NITEL was a mess because it was government regulated until it was deregulated and became a private sector thing. We didn't have good telecoms. The same thing with banking industry until we removed government regulation. So everything that has to do with the institution in Nigeria cannot work. It's that simple. The reason why Muson has been so successful up to this point is because they are not under government regulation. So for things to move, we need institutions like Muson that are independent of regulations, B mass, C mass, and the rest of the XYZ masses. And just say, this institution in the stature of Muson is going to focus on African traditional music, and that's all they're going. And then we look for grants to support it. If you wait for this is what we should do at university, it's not going to happen. That's the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the engagement. Yeah, it's 3:51 now. We are 30 minutes or 20 minutes behind after beyond our scheduled time. I was told there was a question by Dr. Habe. I don't know if Dr. Habe is still there, although he sent a note around there's a Queme's theory. But I also think that if we take the last Kwame narrative, the likes of Mr. Ganikale will definitely take us off, because those theories, I can tell you, they also have their own dynamic, because I remember clearly in the 80s, Meki Zewi and Akpabot and Ekweme, they had a serious fight based on that theory. I remember clearly. Yeah, the three.
Dr. Abe is here, please.
Okay.
Dr. Abe is here, please.
Okay, please.
All right, thank you. Mine is just a little contribution. I appreciate all that has been said by Dr. Luranti and the other scholar. I simply want to say that I can tell you these are the efforts of these institutions over the years. There are loads of theories that has been exhumed from the practices, both in the traditional settings as well as in the popular settings. And they are all over in the institutions. I tell you, there was once Professor Deramola said, he said, we have had a whole lot of composers and performers of African music in the arts, in the popular, that the duties of the scholars should tilt more towards theorizing what they have done. And he said that this is one of the most important things that is being done in the institution. Unfortunately, people who went to the conservatory, good number of people who went to the conservatory, whether in Nigeria or somewhere else, feel that what's been done in the institutions, they don't know how to play, they are not so good. And those in the academics as well, look at it that, okay, we are faced with more of scholarly work, yet some good number of them can still do whatever that those who might have gone to the conservatory has been doing. But I want to say all these things have been going on. I tell you, we only need to put more effort. But I can tell you, in all our institutions, just as you said, that Laz Ekweme, McKinsey, we have been saying all these things. They've been saying it and they've been doing it. And they've been training scholars who have been doing it. And they're all scattered in our institutions. We only need to put more effort. Thank you. That's my contribution.
So much, Dr. Adeolu Abi. Thank you very much. Dear friends and colleagues, thank you so much for today. It's been an interesting journey, and I'm so happy and grateful to Dr. Chidi Obijiaku for opening this interesting conversation in what I can say more like a kind of unusual ways, which is kind of which aligns with the kind of space we have here, the Organ House Class and Seminar Series. It's a space of experimentation. And I can tell you, I think Dr. Obijiaku's approach today has not only provoked, but also opened us, bringing in people in and open layers of things that on a normal day we might have, ignored, or that might have escaped our gaze. So, Dr. Obijiaku, thank you so much for that wonderful work. Thank you for, taking us to this particular level. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, the point about your work is taking advantage of the modern culture, the urban spaces, popular music also. I know Dr. Oluranti, like he said, he belongs to those who also belong or who believe that indigenous culture is still very, very fresh, that we need to also look into it. For these are layers of perspective that are all working together for, centering us back into the Nigerian cultural space, taking full advantage of the resources that we have, both indigenous, popular, as well as the I heart culture. What is the subject more like elephant in the room of today? So thank you so much. I appreciate all the contributors. Thank you for your commitment to this platform, your intriguing and your commitment following up and also sustaining this platform on a weekly basis. Thank you so much. Now, finally, for those who are joining this platform for the first time, I am putting on the comment section the link to our digital space. We call it our documentation experimentation or digital experimentation, our YouTube page, where we have all the series we've had in the last 20 months now. Most of the series, most of the recordings like this, we have them there, not for putting them there for putting them sake, but we are also documenting this important conversation and perspective, because tomorrow somebody working somewhere, a student can open the link and see Dr. Obijiaku's interesting points. That can open another research. So we are mindful of this kind of possibilities. Hence, each of the presenters we've had, the conversation, the dynamics we've had on this platform, we are curating them on our YouTube page. So please, if you are new or if you have not done so, kindly click the link and follow us. Also, check the resources. They are free for you to access. Anytime we curate these materials for you, for your research, and to also mediate the type of dynamics that we are discussing today. This is not there, this is not there. So now we are curating on the go. We are not waiting for a large building, a large boxes. Now what we do from this conversation, we take everything to online. So everyone around the world, from Nigeria, from Congo, anywhere, can go to those spaces and take use use of these important theories, conversation, presentations, ideas. This is our own approach to mediating Nigerian ongoing dynamics. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Obijiaku. Can we clap for him if possible? You can just use your emoji. Let me start with mine. Thank you. I really, really appreciate the your approach and the way you took us from, something more or less, casual
Thank you.
approach into a strong and very, 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 very firm, thing. Thank you so much. We appreciate.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, friends and colleagues,
Thank you.
kindly join us online for the YouTube, follow our page, and definitely we will upload Dr. Obijiaku's presentation also, and you can all have access to it. In case you are working on research on anything, please take advantage of our digital archive on that page. We have all the resources, all the materials, and all the presentations we've had. We have many of them are open, many are not open because they are not ready for that, But these ones, we have up to 55 or 56 presentations that we have curated according to their function and values. Please take advantage of them. Also, if you know of anyone that you think we need to engage, or a musician, art musician, composer, choir master, that is somewhere that you think we need to engage, the organelle research is on a journey. We've been doing that in the last 2 years now. We are documenting voices across Nigeria, particularly foundational voices, who can also help us advance local theories, local ideas, and knowledge. Please join us on this train. Yeah, and lastly, I am happy to announce to you that we are hosting an international symposium on this same topic in July. We call it the African Arts Music Symposium in July. And we are also happy to announce that we are having Kofi Agawu, Professor Mojola. They are coming to champion this conversation in July, right here at the Organ House. But the program is hybrid. I promise you by this Friday or weekend, the poster is ready to publish and you can submit and for presentation. We welcome presentation. We welcome you to join the conversation, either online, wherever you are in the world, or you can come to MTU. We'll be happy to have you on ground at Mountaintop University. So again, Dr. Obijiaku, thank you so much. Thank you. So see you, everybody. See you next week. Thank you so much. Bye.